www.docs4patientcarefoundation.org. That's www.docs4patientcarefoundation.org. Go to our site and please make a generous tax-deductible donation and join the fight today. Thank you.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
Welcome back into the Doctor's Lounge. I am your host, Dr. Hal, and each week myself and my co-host, Dr. Mike, come to you with the information that doctors talk about in doctors' lounges all over the country. We try to give you some insight about the inside baseball stuff that is being discussed that will affect you and your family and the care that you and your family receive. We try to arm you with that information so that you'll be prepared to advocate for yourselves and for your family. So we appreciate you tuning in to this show each week, and we are sponsored by the Docs for Patient Care Foundation, which is the only healthcare think tank in the country that's led entirely by doctors. You should go to our website, which is www.d4pcfoundation.org. That's d4pcfoundation.org, and contribute generously to the Docs for Patient Care Foundation so that we can continue to bring you this show on a regular basis and to continue to do the work that we're doing, which is really extensive. We have been going to Washington often. We have been talking with people who are making policy decisions that are going to affect your health care for the rest of your lives and perhaps the rest of your children's lives. And you need people like us out there so that the ones who are making these decisions are making informed decisions. So please support the work that we do. You will not be sorry. So I just got back from a little bit of vacation, and it was actually not a full vacation. It was a working vacation. I got to do surgery at Lewis, Fort Lewis in Washington State, at the Army hospital there. And it was quite an honor to be able to do that, and we really do owe a debt of gratitude to our military people. I saw some great people out there when I was out there, and really appreciated the opportunity to participate in educating the young doctors at Madigan Army Medical Center there and operate with them, and it was really very, very appreciated being asked to be there. The people who listen to this show on a regular basis hear the topics about of the day in healthcare. We are talking about single-payer systems. We're talking about the issues surrounding all the Obamacare fallout over the years. We are talking about direct primary care, all kinds of free market solutions and issues. And this show, the Doctor's Lounge, again, is the show that shares with you the topics that doctors talk about in the doctors' lounges, in the cafeteria, in the locker room around the country. And doctors are no different than each and every one of you. We are talking about the topics of the day, and from a medical point of view. And one of those topics that gets discussed on a regular basis has to do with one of the third rail issues in society today, and that has to do with gender identity, transgender. People who are regular listeners of this show have heard me get on my soapbox about what the militant LGBTQ community has tried to do to my specialty, which is an attempt to shut down the surgery that I have dedicated my life to and that others in my specialty have as well. I'm labeled as a baby mutilator by these people because I do surgery on their genitals to make them appear like normal children. Now that makes me a mutilator or makes me a monster because I am deciding on what constitutes normal. And actually, I'm not deciding. Society is deciding. But now, everything is upside down. Nothing is the way it was because there is now a new orthodoxy, a new woke society that is really pushing an agenda that if you do not conform to that agenda, that new way of thinking, you are labeled. You cannot disagree with that new orthodoxy. Otherwise, you will be shunned, you will be ridiculed, you will be ostracized. It could even cost you your job or your career. We have seen people who have made decisions that have really changed the way that we talk about these issues. It's been in the news, and I'll touch on it a little bit later. But we've seen the baker in Colorado who would not bake a cake for a gay wedding. We have seen the athletes who are competing as women who are men but who have transitioned. And we've seen the bathroom ban with the people who decide that they are not the gender that they've been assigned and they want to go to a different bathroom. So this issue is really a very controversial, very, very difficult issue to talk about. And I thought that I would try to unpack some of the thoughts behind what's going on and just really rip the Band-Aid off and expose this raw nerve because it is very it's difficult and it is exasperating because if you don't conform to this new way of thinking, if you have a difference of opinion, then that makes you a bad person. So I wanted to start out by talking about transgender. So before we actually talk about that, what we really need to do is talk about gender dysphoria. And what is that? Because I think that you need to define some terms before you can launch into transgender. And a lot of people don't even understand exactly what that means or how we get from boys and girls to transgender. So let's start out by talking about gender dysphoria, which basically is the disconnect between the assigned gender and the experienced gender. I'm finding a cold, so you please bear with me. I apologize for the coughing on the air. I'm drinking my water, and I will do the best I can to not cough into your ears. So this is gender assignment is something that happens when babies are born. They are, and this is what I do for a living. I am the arbiter of abnormal gender assignment, and that's what pediatric urologists have been charged with for as long as I have been practicing or training, which started out in the late 1970s. But the babies are born and assigned a gender, male or female, and historically that has been what has defined society for time immemorial. Back some years ago, and I can't pinpoint exactly when this happened, there was a group of people who spoke out. Actually, I can pinpoint this. Babies were assigned a gender, and if they had genitalia that were different from the norm, then there would be testing done to try to find out who they are, what they are from a male-female standpoint. There were only two genders back in the 1970s and forever before that, and so boys who had no penis or who had genitalia that appeared to be unusable for a variety of reasons were sometimes gender converted into girls and raised as girls because they didn't have the parts necessary to function as males. Now, whether that was the correct decision or an incorrect decision is really moot at this point in time. That was the best information that science had at that point in history. And since that time, we've learned a lot of things that have changed the way that these problems are handled. But for the most part, very few children are being gender converted as babies anymore. And what happened with many of these children was that they were being raised as girls, but they didn't feel like they were girls. They felt like boys, and so they were very unhappy. There was a very high incidence of psychiatric problems, depression, anxiety, other neuropsychiatric problems. There was a high incidence of drug and alcohol abuse and of suicide in this population of people. And this is what led to a moratorium on this kind of surgery and a closer look into what was happening with these patients and why, and how to better deal with them. And so this whole awakening, if you will, I hate using that word because that we're hearing from the millennial generation this term woke. If you're not woke, you don't know what's going on. But from this came a whole new variety of terminology that we're using today. And I'm going to get into this and try to really unpack this issue a little bit better when we come back. So we're taking a break. Stay with us.
The Docs for Patient Care Foundation is your way to join the fight and become a member of an organization created by doctors for patients, dedicated to fighting for your healthcare freedom and preserving the doctor-patient relationship. Get a pen and paper. Write down docs4patientcarefoundation.org. That's DOCS, the number 4, patientcarefoundation.org. Go to our site and please make a generous tax-deductible donation and join the fight today. Thank you.
This is Ron Camacho, host of the Business Hour, on Fridays from 10 to 11 a.m. Join me as I talk with passionate professionals on a program that profiles the best businesses, business professionals, business practices, and fascinating individuals to get an insider view of how America works. 10 to 11 a.m. on America's Web Radio.
The Docs for Patient Care Foundation is your way to join the fight and become a member of an organization created by doctors for patients dedicated to fighting for your healthcare freedom and preserving the doctor-patient relationship. Get a pen and paper. Write down www.docsforpatientcarefoundation.org. That's www.docsforpatientcarefoundation.org. Go to our site and please make a generous tax-deductible donation and join the fight today. Thank you.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
So we're back in the Doctor's Lounge. We're talking today about the third rail in society, which is the LGBTQ community, and specifically transgender, and what this really means and what the implications are if you think differently than what the new left wants people to believe, and they have taken over the narrative. If you have a different opinion, then they are virtue signaling, and if you are in disagreement with any of the issues surrounding this topic, then you are worse than a racist. It's worse than being anti-Semitic. You are discriminating against a class of people that have been discriminated against, according to them, more than the black race, more than the Jewish religion. It's just really gone crazy. The world is totally upside down. So gender dysphoria is a term that came out that really, I think, that was born out of these children who were gender converted and were not feeling the way that they were being raised was consistent with how they felt. And so this whole issue then changed. It moved sideways, and it didn't just involve children who had been surgically altered, but it involved people who were growing up not feeling like they were the gender that they were assigned. A boy didn't feel like they were a boy. They felt like they were a girl, or vice versa. And so a whole new area in psychiatry and in medicine and in social science developed to look at how people felt about these issues. And so diverting from one's assigned gender was termed gender nonconformity. And it's been reported as early as 2 or 3 when children become aware of the notion of gender, and they assert the fact that, no, I'm not a boy, I'm a girl, or no, I'm not a girl, I'm a boy. And this is something that we have seen actually happen as part of normal development in children. I am touching on these nerves on the third rail, and our producer David Moxley is just itching to get into this discussion.
I was just curious, Hal, after the surgery or whatever decisions are made, how much hormonal treatment, and does that go on for life?
I'm getting into that. So I'm so glad that you brought that up, because this is something that I'm trying to get established so that people understand this terminology, because there's there's gender dysphoria, there's gender nonconformity. It is a spectrum until you get to transgender. So transgender is specific. It's when people transition from the gender of assignment to the opposite gender. That's what transgender actually means. So it's one of the things that got me interested in talking about this subject is the literature that I am reading on a regular basis now about children who are now being identified as having gender nonconformity and then gender dysphoria, and they are being pushed by a compliant culture into the position of transgender. They're being assisted. They're being encouraged to move in this direction. When this is part of normal child development, to question your gender, because you become aware of gender at 2 or 3, and some children are not quite clear about their gender, and it requires role models to help them to transition and be the gender that they were assigned based on the way that they look, which is called their phenotype, based on their chromosomes, which is called their karyotype, whether they're XX or XY, based on the hormones that they produce in their body. So if there's some confusion along the way, that's in the past, that has been felt to be part of normal development. And children have confusion about lots of different things in life, and it requires parents and other role models to help them to transition through this very questionable or very confusing time in life. You know, toilet training. Toilet training is something that I get asked about on a weekly basis by the people who come to see me. And I try to tell them, you know, there's a period of time where you go from being a baby with bladders and rectums that can't control things until you go through this phase of some disorder, and it's not you know, a smooth transition, but it is a very hectic time in people's lives. And those of you who've raised children know what I'm talking about. You don't go from being in diapers to being completely socially acceptable in a smooth pathway. It doesn't just happen with a snap of your fingers. It's messy. And the same can be said about, in many children, about gender identity. It's not smooth. It's messy. And I'll use the metaphor about toilet training. If you just don't help children through that period of time, and you just let them be, leave them to their own devices, or worse, you encourage them to just continue to poop and pee in their diapers or on the floor or anywhere else, they will go off the rails because they don't have the guidance, they don't have the pathway to transition through. Gender is not all that together different, because we're born with certain parts that and a certain gender that you're assigned, and hopefully everything works together. Sometimes it doesn't. But if it's not a transition that's happening in a smooth way, you don't just say, oh, we're going to let the child be what they want to be and encourage that. You try to make sure that you're helping them transition through that period in a way that helps them to get through that messy period. And some children don't. And that doesn't necessarily mean that that's a problem. Those are the children that probably have there's more working than just the normal developmental stuff, because gender identity is multifactorial, and it starts in the womb. It starts with how the brain is imprinted, how the neural connections are made. It is dependent on the hormones that the brain is exposed to. So there are many factors that are at play, and we don't understand all of those factors. But to say that children who are confused about their gender should be encouraged to be whoever they feel like they want to be, I think is a form of child abuse. And I think that you have to help these children. Now, some children just are not going to be what they appear to be. And that smaller subset are the children that really we are going to need to focus on. And so this problem, it's not a problem. And if I misspeak or say things out of context, it's not because I'm prejudiced or it's not because I am not sensitive. I just may misspeak about a few of these issues as we speak through this. But this whole issue is a bigger issue today than it really should be, and that's because we have got a compliant culture that is encouraging this whole movement in this direction and not helping many of these children transition through this messy period in their life. And I'm going to go more into this when we get back into the next segment, so please stay with us.
The Docs for Patient Care Foundation is your way to join the fight and become a member of an organization created by doctors for patients, dedicated to fighting for your healthcare freedom and preserving the doctor-patient relationship. Get a pen and paper. Write down docs4patientcarefoundation.org. That's DOCS, the number 4, patientcarefoundation.org. Go to our site and please make a generous tax-deductible donation and join the fight today. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Dr. Mike Karuchak. Have you ever wondered what doctors talk about amongst themselves? If you do, join us on the Doctor's Lounge and hear the doctors' conversations amongst themselves. Join me and my co-host, Dr. Hal Scherz, every Thursday morning, 8 to 9 a.m.
The Docs for Patient Care Foundation is your way to join the fight and become a member of an organization created by doctors for patients, dedicated to fighting for your healthcare freedom and preserving the doctor-patient relationship. Get a pen and paper. Write down www.docs4patientcarefoundation.org. That's www.docs4patientcarefoundation.org. Go to our site and please make a generous tax-deductible donation and join the fight today. Thank you.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
So we're back, and I just want to remind everyone about the Direct Primary Care Conference in November in Orlando that is put on by the Docs for Patient Care Foundation. This will be our 4th annual conference. It is without question the best conference on direct primary care in the country, and I don't use those platitudes lightly. It truly is, and anybody who is out there who is involved in healthcare and is thinking about becoming a direct primary care doctor or wants to get involved in the direct primary care movement, or if you are already a direct primary care doctor and you want to learn how you can improve your practice, I strongly encourage you to come to Orlando in November. I don't have the exact date in front of me, but please check our website, www.4pcfoundation.org, and all that information is on there. We're also streaming live on Facebook, on America's Web Radio, and I would like to, and on YouTube, and I would like to just remind everybody that you should tune in regularly and see where you can follow us on that, and I encourage you to send questions in on Facebook, and we'll try to this is probably a topic that a lot of people have some thoughts about, and I would love to get your input and respond to it. So the normal development is for there to be some kind of gender nonconformity in children, and it is an absolute normal part of development for children to explore various modes of gender expression throughout childhood. And some children don't associate with either gender, and they remain gender neutral. And so this small subset of children that I think exists are the ones that need to be helped. And they need, everybody needs help. But these are the ones who are likely not comfortable in the gender that they're assigned. And these are the children that I really think are the group that is in need of multi-specialty assistance to help them get to where they need to be in life. Puberty suppression is something that has been recommended to try to buy time for these children who are feeling that they are non-conforming from a gender standpoint, or who have gender dysphoria. And it's typically been recommended to start hormone treatment to change your gender at age 16. And this has been considered best practice standards by the transgender community and by the endocrinology associations. But this is now in a state of flux. Let me, first of all, talk about the fact that that there is a children's hospital, Akron Children's Hospital, that has opened the Center for Gender Affirming Medicine. And this center will offer services to children as young as 7, which to me is really pushing the envelope. And it is something that I think is, as I've said in the last segment, somewhat dangerous, and to really encourage children to move in this direction without really trying to help them to identify who they really are. Now, I will tell you that I have personal experience with some children who, as young as 6, knew that they were not the gender that were assigned. That does not necessarily mean that that child needs to be given hormone treatment at age 6, but they do need to be given resources to help them to decide, are they really truly a person who is feeling that they're of the wrong gender assignment, or are they just having gender confusion? And if you can help them through that, then that subset of children who comes through that process, who has truly the sense that they're in the wrong gender assignment, those are the children that need to be given the support and the the resources and the treatment to help them move on to the next stage. So a center like the one at Akron Children's Hospital lists the services that they have available, which is education, supportive care, gender-affirming hormones, pubertal suppression, mental health care coordination, and preventative care. And in this center, parents get to interact with social workers, nurse coordinators, mental health specialists, and endocrinologists. Now, lest you think that I am being a Neanderthal or I am being a homophobe or a transphobe, that's not it at all. I am objecting to making these decisions for children before they are capable of really truly knowing for themselves. And I worry that there are people around the country now who are giving hormones, not hormone suppression, but hormones to help these children transition from one gender to the next, to the other, way sooner than they should be exposing them to this. And that is really the issue. And I think that doing so is, in my opinion, child abuse. And parents who allow that to happen should be charged with child abuse. And it's just the opposite now. This militant community is saying that people who express opinions like mine are the abusers. They're the ones who are being bigoted, being prejudiced, and not helping these children who are clearly uncomfortable with who they are to move forward and to be the person that they want to become. And I think that this is a very, very difficult situation, a very gray zone. It is not black and white. And so herein lies the issue, because if you disagree with this orthodoxy, if you do not conform to this new woke way of thinking, you are labeled transphobic, you're a hater. It could really truly cost you your job or your career. And if you think that's hyperbole, I will share with you a story that came out last week about a doctor who lost his career. He was the head of child and adolescent psychiatry at the University of Louisville School of Medicine. And he appeared on a panel at the Heritage Foundation. And this professor is an expert on child and adolescent psychiatry and this whole issue about gender. And he was previously on the faculty of other well-respected medical schools in the past, Medical College of Georgia, the University of Minnesota Medical School, and the Heritage Foundation had a panel which was called Gender Dysphoria in Children, Understanding Science and Medicine. Science and medicine. And so he opined about this with a panel talking about his position about this whole topic, and that he disagreed with this orthodoxy, and it got distributed to the thought police, and they contacted the University of Louisville, and they demoted him first because he had an opinion that was different than this new woke community. And then, if that wasn't enough, they filed a motion to get him kicked off of the faculty, which they did. And so what I'm saying right now today could possibly get me kicked off of a medical staff, because I disagree with this whole movement to allow children as young as 7 to change their gender because that's how they feel, and if I disagree with that, then that could potentially cost me my job or my career. That's certainly happening in academia. It is it's and in medicine. This doctor was an academic doctor. It cost him both his medical practice and his academic practice. And so we're at a time right now where right is left, left is right, black is white and white is black, day is night and night is day. Nothing is as it seems. And if you disagree, if you God forbid, say something that is now a controversial issue, but is not part of this whole new awakening, then you are putting yourself in jeopardy to be ostracized, ridiculed, slandered, lose everything that you've spent your whole life building. This whole issue about transgender is such an important issue because it is covering just about every aspect of life in America. We talked a little bit about the NCAA, about athletics and transgender, and we there've recently been this person who just won Division II championship in the 100 and 400 meter hurdles, CC Telfer. And CC Telfer is a male by birth who transitioned and became a female and competed as a female and won national championship as a female. And not a day goes by that we're not hearing about this controversy in the media about girls who are filing lawsuits against transgender girls who are competing against them. These girls who are biological girls who are competing as girls are at a disadvantage, and that's because they're competing against males. And the NCAA has a policy about this, and I'm going to read this policy to you when we get back in the next segment. So stay with us.
The Docs for Patient Care Foundation is your way to join the fight and become a member of an organization created by doctors for patients, dedicated to fighting for your healthcare freedom and preserving the doctor-patient relationship. Get a pen and paper. Write down docs4patientcarefoundation.org. That's DOCS, the number 4, patientcarefoundation.org. Go to our site and please make a generous tax-deductible donation and join the fight today. Thank you.
This is Ron Camacho, host of the Business Hour, on Fridays from 10 to 11 a.m. Join me as I talk with passionate professionals on a program that profiles the best businesses, business professionals, business practices, and fascinating individuals to get an insider view of how America works. 10 to 11 a.m. on America's Web Radio.
The Docs for Patient Care Foundation is your way to join the fight and become a member of an organization created by doctors for patients dedicated to fighting for your healthcare freedom and preserving the doctor-patient relationship. Get a pen and paper. Write down www.docsforpatientcarefoundation.org. That's www.docsforpatientcarefoundation.org. Go to our site and please make a generous tax-deductible donation and join the fight today. Thank you.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
And we're back in the Doctor's Lounge. For the last segment, we've talked about the third rail issue, which is transgender. And I want to read to you the NCAA policy on transgender. So a trans male, which is a female to male transition, is one who has received medical exception for treatment with testosterone, and they may compete as a man, but not on a woman's team. A trans female, which is a male to female, is a male that's been treated with testosterone suppression and who may compete on a men's team, but may not compete on a women's team until they have completed 1 year of suppression. Any transgender athlete not taking hormones may compete in accordance with the gender assigned to them at birth. A female to male athlete not taking testosterone may compete as a man or a woman, but a male to female athlete not taking hormones may not compete on a woman's team. So this whole transgender issue has thrown athletics into a complete tizzy. And so the whether or not this is an issue that should even be allowed to exist, or there should be a separate competition for transgender athletes, just as there is for disabled athletes. And I'm not saying that transgender is disabled, but can you imagine if you had a Bruce Jenner in their prime competing in women's athletics? How unfair that is to the women who have spent their entire life training as women athletes. I can't think of anything more egregious. So, maybe there needs to be, male athletics, female athletics, and then transgender athletics, just like you have the Special Olympics. Bathrooms, male bathrooms, female bathrooms, and then transgender bathrooms. I'm not being glib, and I'm not being angry about it. I'm just saying that there are many people who have grievances and who have legitimate arguments and who have their own rights. And I'm not for a second dismissing the rights of people who don't conform with the norms of society. But their rights should not impinge on the rights of other people. And so if one wishes to recognize this group, and I think that they should be recognized, it shouldn't be on the same playing field necessarily, no pun intended, as those who are following a certain set pattern of, quote, norms. And to try to fit a round peg into a square hole just because it feels good is not fair to a whole nother set of individuals. And so why should one group's rights supersede those of another group? And that, I think one can make a very strong and compelling argument for what I've just suggested. So I'm going to finish up this whole topic today with a very provocative kind of point of view. And that has to do with the transgender affairs that cross many boundaries. It crosses politics, it crosses medicine, psychology, law, and everyone involved in these different aspects of this issue has a contribution to make. It's because how we view gender affects all of us, whether it is doctors who are taking care of patients, whether it is which bathroom you're going to use, whether it is who gets to compete on a playing field or who gets to bake a cake. These are issues that really should not be confrontational, but they should be really, it should be somewhat of a collaboration where everybody with an opinion about this and who has a contribution to make about this is heard. One area where the answer might lie is in neuroscience. And we're not there yet. I started out by saying that this whole issue may come up as early as prenatally because of how the brain responds to the certain hormones that the baby is exposed to in utero, and how that brain responds, how it is imprinted, is going to determine how it works going forward. And that has been shown with various studies using various tests on men and women, using brain scans, PET scanning, which is a very specialized type of imaging study that is mostly experimental now, but there's applications in actual clinical medicine that are promising for the future. But another area beside imprinting, which is the way that certain chemicals affect the connections of the brain, is called epigenetics. And epigenetics is how the environment affects the chromosomes or the phenotype. So there are genes that people have in their body, and some genes are they are not expressed. They just are there. Other genes are expressed, and they produce certain chemicals that lead to certain reactions in the body. This is all somewhat confusing stuff. But researchers have found that that there's a fourfold difference in the expressed genes in a 50-year-old set of twins than 3-year-old twins. So what does that mean? It means that in the environment, if you take a pair of identical twins at age 3, many of their genes are not expressed. They are just sitting there dormant. If you take a pair of 50-year-old twins and you look at the genes that are there that had not been expressed but are expressed in as time goes on, that there's a fourfold difference in the gene expression between a 3-year-old and a 50-year-old. And the gene expression is different in those twins, in those identical twins. So the environment is going to influence how genes are expressed. So let's pull this back to transgender. If the environment affects how genes are expressed, that can influence the expression of gender at the brain level. And that's what what researchers are now seeing. So let me end this with a theoretical and controversial question that everybody should ask themselves. So if centers can be determined in the brain that can affect gender, and if it can be determined whether the center in the brain is expressing gender other than the assigned gender that conforms with the way that they look, and if this can be modified if the expressed gender is different than the assigned gender. In other words, if somebody looks like a man but they think they're a woman, and they can identify that center in the brain that's allowing that to happen, would it be ethical to fix that center if it could be altered to make the gender that the person feels conform with the gender that they are assigned based on their body parts? Because that is what researchers are looking at, and that is the question, whether or not that's okay to do, whether or not we should be looking at that, or whether it's not okay, and whether that's gene modification and that is eugenics, and that's like trying to determine before the baby, right after conception, whether or not you're going to get a boy or a girl. But if you can do this, then is that even ethical? And that is a very controversial and difficult question that I think we should be asking ourselves, because clearly you've got people out there who are hurting, and we can, if there's a possibility of making everything concordant, that means to work together, to really mesh together. Should we even be thinking that, or is that fascist totalitarian thought? And I don't have the answer for that, but I thought that I would leave on that note. So I know that this was a tough topic to talk about, and it was a controversial topic, and one that's in the news on a regular basis. And I wanted to weigh in and give my opinion about what I thought this was all about regarding children, especially, which is something that I have a 35-year experience with. So thank you for being with us today, and I look forward to being back with you in 2 weeks with a guest that I'm working on that will hopefully we'll talk about healthcare transparency. So thanks for being with us.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.